Hey, this is Jared and Nate over at eCarrier Check. We wanted to go live today and talk about dispatching 101. And really, what we're going to focus on today is, just some basic principles, some things that we get from questions on a day to day basis. So, Nate, thanks for being on. I'm excited about this because Nate really is the guy that uh, he takes so many phone calls from all of you. And so I want to ask Nate a few things on, landing your first carrier. He and I were in the trenches 2 weeks ago. Nate, let's talk about when we made calls. We've made calls a couple different times. Talk about the results from two different times and what did you see in those time frames?
Yeah, definitely. A couple of the different times we made some calls. We tried the morning calls, right? And to me, I think we made about three calls within 10, 15 minutes, and we noticed that we weren't getting too many pickups, and we got a lot of voicemails or people were too busy. So the second time when we tried this, in the afternoon, which was a great idea. I just had a phone call earlier this morning where this lady was struggling with finding carriers, and I encouraged her to start calling in the afternoon. And the reason I say that is because we tried that particular time of day. We seemed to have better luck, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it was great.
Yeah. So the first time we called, what time was it?
It was about 3 in the afternoon our time, so about 5 Eastern.
Yeah, absolutely. And when we called the other time, what time was that?
It was about 10 in the morning, maybe 9.
Yeah.
It was earlier. So
Yeah, absolutely. So I think really what happens here, and we talk about this a lot with um, differentiating yourself. I know a lot of dispatchers, they do a lot of the same things, right? Where they go out and they make a PDF and they join a bunch of Facebook groups and they add they put those up. Hey, call me. I want to make sure that we're here. And so I really want to talk about today is like, okay, how do we land our first carrier? What do we do? Nate just took a call and said, the lady said she made 400 calls this week. And I love that. First off, what a grind. There is no other way of doing it. You've got to grind to get there. But I really want to talk about, there's some important things. Let's talk about staying organized. How do you stay organized when you're calling 400 people? Nate, can you talk through, obviously we're with eCarrier Check, so we support that software, but what's a good way of staying organized in your mind?
yeah, I mean, you kind of hit on the nail when you're making 400 phone calls. How do you stay organized there, right? And that was my first thought when this lady called me this morning. Well, obviously with eCarrier Check, we can keep you organized. Instead of living off that spiral notebook, let's monitor the calls you made, those 400 calls you made. Let's make some lists. Let's take some notes. So we offer that, with eCarrier Check, and I think it's very. I think it's important to stay organized. Especially when you're reaching out to so many carriers, but we have that ability to stay organized. It's important, and eCarrier Check's built for that.
Yeah, and even I think it's time to drill down. Let's say that you called 400 people, and I recommend honestly calling people that are in your local area first, because you have something to relate with them immediately, right? You're like, hey, this is Jared from Western Nebraska, and although there's not a lot of carriers out here, but when you can relate locally, there's at least one thing off the plate that allows you to do that. But I think strategy, when you're calling these 400 people, Nate, let's talk strategy real quick. What's the easiest way to go when it comes to being a dispatcher, as far as equipment? What do you recommend?
I think I would recommend what are your such as strategies is taking a step back and seeing what is working for you and what's not. It's okay to try different things. As many as phone calls that I've received, I hear a lot of different strategies.
Mm.
A lot will work for one person, maybe not the other. One thing that I've learned in this industry is maybe your tone of voice. So maybe check your tone of voice. Maybe time you're calling, who you're, what type of carriers you're trying to get at. So it's good to know the type of carrier you're trying to bring on.
Yeah.
So that's important too. I think that falls into strategy as well.
Yeah. 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 For me, like, I think it's really about, first and foremost, let's start to measure, the people that you're calling, right? So, do you want to call people that just started? Everybody's calling them, right? Maybe we call people that are 4 months old instead of 2 months old. Or at the end of the day, you guys are going to have to dispatch them too, right? So let's make sure that when you're calling these carriers, they're flatbeds, vans, reefers. Let's try to stick to the main three to start, because I think what will happen is if you get into specialty equipment, and there's nothing wrong with specialty equipment such as hot shots or straight trucks or other things like that. There's nothing wrong with that. There's loads out there for them, but it's hard enough to get your first carrier. Let's not make it hard enough to get their first load. You know what I mean? So let's not put yourself in that position. So I think strategy comes into how old are these carriers, first off? What type of equipment do they have, right? And do you gel well with people? At the end of the day, sometimes you just don't gel well with people. Nate, we've obviously have a lot of personalities that come through on phone calls. Talk to me about trying to communicate to somebody that you don't gel with versus somebody that you do gel with.
Yeah, that's a great question. I love this because you don't know on that person on the other line if they're having a bad day or not, right? So how do we go about this? Well, let's try to match their tone of voice and let's try to relate in a way we can. Maybe it's simple as just starting off, hope you're having a good day. If you're not, hopefully there's something you provide for them will brighten up their day. I think it's very important to do your best to relate to people. And, obviously it's not going to happen every time, but do your best. It's only going to make your phone calls better. And it's going to help you grow.
Yeah, absolutely. So as far as strategy, obviously we talked about equipment. We've talked a little bit about time of day. I think a lot of carriers are getting blown out with calls during general hours. I really feel like it's important that, I hate to put this any other way. If you're really trying to land your first account or starting your own business, sometimes you got to put in some extra hours. I wouldn't be afraid to call them on weekends and even afternoons, late afternoons. Honestly, when the best times to call? Here in about 3 hours. What time is it? It's let's see, it's 1:30 afternoon Eastern. Start calling people this afternoon, Nate. I think you're going to get a lot more people that are they're done for the week. They're starting to relax. They're probably putting their feet up, maybe having a beer. Talk to me about, Nate. We called people during the general times, like everybody is, and then we called people in the afternoon on a Friday. Tell me more about their attitudes or their willingness to talk. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, and keep in mind when you're contacting these carriers, and it might be, after their workday, they could have a long day, so it could be tough to keep that conversation going. But I would suggest asking open-ended questions. Definitely to keep them on that phone, keep them interested. And maybe you can add more to that. What have you seen in your time in the freight industry? How do you keep those carriers on the phone after a long day? They're probably fed up with being, talking to people, or I'm sure they get a bunch of calls.
Talk to me about good examples of open-ended questions. What would be a few that you could give to the people?
Just asking, certain ways. Tell me more. Tell me more about maybe their loads that they're carrying, maybe the equipment that they have. Asking questions that won't have the carrier answering yes or no. We want them to make sure with open-ended questions you're getting some feedback, not just yeses or nos.
Yeah, absolutely. I think something that I was when we first started to get into selling our services and talking to dispatchers, something that I always you just got to understand where they're coming from. How long have they been in the industry? They might have just started, but they've been driving for 20 years for somebody. So, honestly, just understanding them, becoming more with them. You want to try to partner with them. You want to try to give them your service. I think that's really important with building relationships with people out of the blue.
Right. I like that. And another thing too is try to put yourself in their shoes. We may not know exactly what they're going through, but stay open-minded, try to put yourself in their shoes and find out maybe their struggles and how you can help with that struggle.
Yeah, absolutely. The one reason why, and I'm a big believer in this, is as far as, adding more value to them. How can you add value to a carrier? When we talked to carriers about this, I thought this was probably one of the most interesting comments that we got from carriers when we did talk to them. Do you remember this conversation? You might share with them on, they wanted to be more visible. They
want to be more. They want someone to listen to them.
Yes,
right?
Exactly. Talk through this a little more.
Yeah. So when we call these carriers, one thing that Jared asked was, tell me something you would like to hear, or more of those dispatchers. mentioned about just listening and trying to keep them busy. There's a couple other things if you have in mind, but I know the big one that stood out to me was just listening. I think sometimes people, jump too fast, just listen to those carriers and, really just have a personal conversation with them,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. The one guy really went into, well, I don't want somebody just to book a load. If something comes up and it becomes an issue, he wanted you to help them find a solution. He wanted their help to make some phone calls. Honestly, sometimes drivers just don't want to pick up the phone, and I get that. And so I think it's important that you become a full service value provider for them in booking loads and communicating and over communicating and just staying consistent. Checking in with them. How's the trip? How are things going? A lot of drivers honestly feel fairly alone. They're out in their trucks. They may be away from their families. They feel alone, and so it's definitely one of those things that you got to continue to be there with them and let them know. Just reassure them, hey, you're not in this alone. You're with them together. So um, I think the other thing that really has set us up as far as something that Nate and I really try to preach and do in our own practice, but I think this is so important for you. The lady just did 400 calls. What's next week look like? Nate, talk about the consistency avenue and how important it is to stay consistent with communication.
Yeah. So if back to the strategies, we'll throw that into your strategy plan. How often are you reaching out to these carriers? You know, a big thing in our world that I feel like is spams. Like people assume we got spam coming in and out. So it's important to stay consistent when you're reaching out. Maybe it's once a week or twice a week or a couple times a month. But I think that hitting them from different spots, whether it's mass texting or emailing, maybe some flyers, social media, that LinkedIn, Facebook. So there's multiple ways you can reach out to people and try to grow some connection and just reach out to them weekly. Stay consistent.
Yeah. Yeah. Something that we continue to hear from dispatchers that are on our platform is, how many times does it take to reach out to a carrier to not only build trust, but to actually get them to sign up with you as a dispatcher? And I thought this number was really surprising to me, but it takes anywhere from 3 to 6 on average touches, communication points. And that could be emails, that could be uh, phone calls, that could be texting, like Nate said, but definitely align with them on the platform that they feel the most comfortable with. So I know there's a lot of communication points out there with WhatsApp or Facebook, texting, whatever it may be. So make sure you're aligning with them, but understand you're probably not going to get a carrier to sign up with you on the first phone call. So don't give up. Compound consistency uh, is so crucial in this world. I would say that in my life, um, as far as making phone calls, honestly, I'm really not that good of a sales rep. I'm just more consistent than most, and so that's really what is huge to just continue to remind yourself. And our last point, Nate, as far as dispatching and talking about how to land your first carrier, when we talk about zigging before zagging or differentiating yourself, what are things people can do to differentiate yourself? Give us some ideas or thoughts of how to be a little bit different than the next.
Yeah, I know you've done a couple interviews on eCarrier Check with outside people, and they get some really good feedback. So I really encourage the people to watch those YouTube videos, but get comfortable with being uncomfortable. If you're not comfortable picking up that phone, it practice. Definitely take your time and practice, and there's help out there. Reach out for that help. Add some value. Stay positive.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the biggest things that I seen is uh, if you want to go, I saw this quote this morning. I thought it was really good. If you want to go far, do it alone. If you want to go, or if you want to go fast, do it alone. If you want to go far, do it together. And that togetherness, although you may be sitting in your house and making those calls, can be as simple as just, building a peer group together and really sharing success stories, being a part of different education platforms. We recommend, I think it'll help you grow and network. Obviously, being emerged into the different Facebook groups and Instagram groups and all those things. But I think as far as differentiating yourself, really, I think that just becomes the differentiator in any way of building a relationship is going to be yourself, and being vulnerable and being real and being simple. You don't have to oversell this. Just say, hey, here's where I'm at. And I do think it's important that you build up your own social media account. So, not just build an actual, a PDF that you post up. Don't just build that. Take time to have a LinkedIn account and talk about your experiences and why you're doing what you're doing. People want to know about your why. People want to know who you are. So I think, I always say zig before you zag. And I think what I mean there is all these people are doing one thing. Try to find another way to communicate. I
Yeah,
think that's so important.
I agree. Definitely do. It's really gonna make you stand out too. And I think what's beautiful about our community at eCarrier Check, if you've been on a demo or a Q&A, you have the ability to connect with anyone. I mean, just yesterday we had a call on the demo and two people were able to link up with each other. It was awesome. So you have that ability if you have a community like us, hop on a demo, hop on that Q&A. And I'm sure there's other communities like that. So, hop on those Facebook groups and, link up with people. So
Yeah, absolutely. Guys, I want to say thank you for everyone that's watching, the likes, the comments, anything that comes in. We get so many questions during the week that we wanted to go live this morning. Just to give you guys an idea, we hit our 500 subscriber this week. And so we were excited about that. And so we wanted to go Facebook or YouTube live this morning and just say hi, give some more value to you guys, and try to continue to help you guys grow, because that's our ultimate goal. Is how do we help you grow? Obviously, we like to help you grow through the strategy of using eCarrier Check, but just as people, we want to help you grow. We want to see you guys get bigger. Nate, any closing thoughts or any other thoughts before we kind of head out?
yeah, just thanks for the support. And, for those of you that are, interested in some subscribers and just getting interested in just prospects, reach out to us. We're always here. So anything you need, email or just give us a call.
Awesome, Nate. Well, you guys will see us next Friday as we go live again and have more sessions, or we talk about different value adds for you guys. So have a great Friday. Make some calls, stay consistent, and we'll talk later.